The red pill community, as led by guys like Rollo Tomasi with The Rational Male, Ryan Stone, looking at guys in that vein of the red pill community. It is designed with the idea that every single woman on the planet has borderline personality disorder. And so it justifies treating them like subhuman creatures that are livestock for the purpose of sexual pleasure. It pulls in men who have anxious attachment style who feel inferior, or men who have avoidant attachment style but don't want to manipulate anybody else. So they're just kind of like frozen in time, never really connecting with anybody. And it says, all women are going to hurt you. You deserve sexual pleasure. Here's what you're going to do to grow yourself. And they teach a juvenile masculinity. Okay. Masculinity is trying to emerge again. It was fledgling. It was reborn. Women sheltered it. Now they're becoming juvenile masculine. I'm going to emerge from the feminine shadow and become a fully masculine man. But of course, it's teenage juvenile masculinity, Andrew Tate model. And then it is, I will never trust a woman ever because she'll smother me with her feelings and use me and attack me. So I will use them instead. And it's the idea that you are livestock to me. I will be a benevolent livestock owner, and I will use you the way that I intend because this is the only system available to me. It negates the possibility of emotional intimacy or trust or real bonding. And instead of anxious attachment, it fosters the most manipulative avoidant attachment possible. It does not fix the problem. It merely shifts the problem and then creates new pain for everybody involved. That's the red pill community.
I'm glad we're there. I'm glad we're here right now. Because I come across so many men, Adam, like they're like, I fell into it, right? You know, you get a anxious guy that feels like he doesn't have a place in the world. You have these polarizing figures online that are, you know, bringing in certain types of women, and then they're combative, and then they seem to have some level of authority, and it's like these guys got it all together. You know what's interesting is I had Rich Cooper on the podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with Rich. Entrepreneurs in Cars was his big kind of breakthrough YouTube channel. And, you know, I think at one point, I don't even know where he would kind of line himself up. You know, Rich and I agree on certain things. There's a lot of things that we don't agree on. You know, one thing he said is behind the scenes. I think he's had a glimpse behind the scenes into these characters, these guys that are online. I really think that's what they are. They're characters that they're playing online. Tate being, you know, probably the most successful one of them all. He said a lot of them aren't good men, and they don't know how to be good at being a man. And it was just so shocking, right? It's like, and that's the challenge with the internet today. And the challenge with this content is anybody can go online with a microphone and some cameras and lights behind them and just preach like they have it all kind of figured out. But like at their core, at their essence, like they're not sharing an authentic version of who they are. And I think a guy that is anxious and is lost in this world and didn't have a father figure and didn't have a leader, didn't have a coach, didn't have a mentor in his life, he sees somebody like that and he can quickly latch on and be like, that's my guy. And then I've had so many guys that have gone down that model, right? They're like, I had all the success in the world. I was making all the money. I was building my business. And I felt like I deserved all the sexual access that online was telling me. And then they get to the bottom of that pit and it's empty. It's empty inside.
I have hope that a lot of the red pill guys, even the gurus, are trying to work their way through, right? Masculinity is emerging. It popped out of its egg. It was a weak little fledgling. Women took care of it, but a lot of women were angry and confused and frightened and tried to smother it. Other women tried to shelter it. We grew up into juvenile masculinity. I remember popping out into the red pill circles and masculinity about 12 years ago. I remember reading Roosh V, if you remember him from way back in the day. And he was hardcore, like women, you know, you need to be banging these number of women. They'll do worse to you if they get the chance, blah, blah, blah. And I remember reading some of his stuff on masculinity and thinking, okay, he takes a good stance on ownership, self-discipline, right? A lot of good things like that. But this stuff about women is evil. And I was thinking, like, this is like, what do we do for these guys? And Roosh V, ever since, for anyone who doesn't know his story, he's had a tremendous, overwhelming conversion where he has said, my stuff on masculinity was fairly good. My stuff on women was evil. And he has unpublished his books, destroyed his economic empire that he was benefiting from, and has had a full religious conversion where he's now trying to live a much, much more masculine, but spiritual and moral life instead. So I have hope that a lot of these guys are going to change. I saw not that long ago a clip of Tate, people asking him about love and marriage. And he said, you know, I'm wondering if I've maybe been wrong about it all this time. So I think there's hope, right? There's an emerging movement. in the world right now about mature masculinity, okay? Grown, mature masculinity. People ask me all the time, and Frank, I'd love to get your take on this. People ask me, where does masculinity come from? How do you define it? And I say that the core of masculinity, the beginning phase, even the juvenile phase, really it springs from personal sovereignty. You must have total personal sovereignty, which means control over your emotions, control over your finances, control over your freedom, control over your own safety, right? You have to be fully personal sovereign. No master, no slave relationship with anything. You cannot be even governed by your own fear, your attachment problems. You have to master them. But what is the purpose then? Okay, masculinity finds its base, its root is in personal sovereignty, but its fullness, its maturity is in servantship to other people, service to others. You can only serve your family when you are personally sovereign and can provide for that family. Okay, masculinity has a purpose. It's not masturbatory. Juvenile masculinity is masturbatory. I think that we are finally evolving beyond that masturbation cycle into the fullness of mature masculinity and servanthood into our families, our communities. You are serving men every single day here on this podcast and your work with men. You are serving others, but it has sprung from your personal sovereignty. What do you think of that? Am I on base or am I off?
I would agree wholeheartedly with exactly what you shared there. And I think for me, just a great example, a personal example would be kind of my journey as a man, right? Struggling with a pornography addiction, feeling like I was chasing the success that the world told me was meaningful, right? Build a great physique, make a lot of money, acquire a lot of material things, sleep with a lot of women, right? Like that was the juvenile kind of masculinity. And it's like, that wasn't what I saw at home. That was what I saw the world telling me was the most important. But you get to the top of those mountains and then it's emptier than it was at the bottom. And I think taking personal responsibility, and for me, a big conversion of this, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is the spiritual conversion. So I came to Christ, I gave my life to Christ at 35 years old. Had I had it maybe at 18, 19, maybe the 20s and 30s would have played out a little bit different for me. But I think the sovereignty or the responsibility for me came in that conversion, right? And you gave that other example of, I forgot his name there, but you gave the big guy that was in the red pill community, like his conversion was spiritually rooted. And I think some of the emergence that we're seeing with, and I don't know if the numbers support this, but I think what I see online is you see these male leaders that are now stepping more boldly out in their faith, right? And I think that gives us the sovereignty, the responsibility, but it also gives us purpose, right? When you believe that you were created in an image of God and you were placed here at this point in time of this entire universe, there gives you purpose and meaning to your life. And I think so many men that don't have that in their life struggle with that purpose, struggle with that meaning. Why am I here? Because God chose you to be here right now. God chose you at this point, in this time, with these skills, with these adversities, in this situation. There's a meaning behind that. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to articulate the question exactly. I think you got it, though, is like, what role is our faith and maybe our spiritual life playing in how we kind of fall into some of these categories, I guess?
I'm going to answer you in maybe a roundabout kind of way. When you were a young boy, maybe a young teen, and you'd play a board game or play a game with another guy, or a game of catch, or even a video game or something like that, you'd play a game with a guy with weak moral character. And he'd maybe cheat at that game, or he'd be a jerk about it. He'd do all kinds of stupid shenanigans, screw up the game, anything in order to win, right? He would do anything necessary to win at that stupid little game, even if it meant destroying his relationship with you in the process. Did you meet some of these guys when you were young? I sure did.
Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah.
And what happens when that game is over? He wins, and then what happens?
Probably not going to play with him again.
Yeah. Did you ever get in a fist fight with those guys? Did you ever get in a pushing match or yelling match with those guys after the game?
Oh, we're going way back. I don't think I've been in a fist fight in 20 something plus years, but yeah, as a little boy, teenager, for sure.
Yeah. So he has so focused in on the little game he's playing right now that he has forgotten that game is placed in a much larger context, with a much larger game being played in a much larger field and full relationship connections and everything that he has utterly missed. I think that when men focus in solely on the physical world that's in front of you, It's like you focusing in on that game of Monopoly or that game of checkers or whatever, and you're going to cheat and push and everything you can to win that one little game, as if that game matters more than anything else. Now, at the end of the game, everything goes back in the box, and what are you left with? You're left with the relationships of the human beings around you that you built. This is why when I've got guys at age 75, 78, even up into their 80s coming into my coaching practice, the reason they come in is not, well, Adam, I want to bang more chicks. Well, Adam, I want to sleep with this trophy model. Well, this girl over here isn't quite doing what I want to do. How do I make her do it? No, the guys come in and they say, Adam, I have neglected my relationships my entire life. I'm 78 years old. I'm terminally ill. I have one son. He barely speaks to me, and I cannot go out of the world like this. I've had everything a man is ever supposed to want, and I am more miserable than I've ever been. And it's not. I can't wait to die, but at the same time, I can't leave. I can't leave no legacy at all. I can't do this. What do I do? Help me. Guys forget that at the end of the game, everything goes back in your box, and what you're left with is the human impact that you have created. So men out there right now need to be asking themselves, I don't care if you're 12 years old, I don't care if you're 78 years old, what human impact have you left? Do you even have the capacity to leave a human impact? If you have broken attachment, you are not collaborating with anyone. You are manipulating people, whether gently or roughly. You are manipulating other people with your actions. You're pushing buttons. You're afraid all the time. You're ruining your relationships. Come 78 years old, you're going to be calling me up and say, Adam, what the hell do I do? Please help me. I have no legacy. Or your legacy is going to be one you don't like. You're going to be watching your kids go through one divorce after another. You're going to be watching your kids overdose on drugs. You're going to have, broken marriages, and everything is a disaster. And you just watch your kids and grandkids fall apart around you if you even have them. So don't do that. I get plenty of guys in at 65 who don't have kids, and they say, Adam, my life has been wasted. I have no legacy. And I say, absolutely not. That is crap. You just haven't built the right relationships yet to foster the next generation, to grow the next generation, to leave a legacy. Let's talk about your legacy. In a couple of sessions, we can turn them around. It's amazing. It's amazing how just a couple of key moments where you make some changes in your life and you start investing in the next generation properly. It's amazing what that can do for your mindset and your mentality. But you've got to have secure attachment to be able to do it. Otherwise, you won't form the right relationships.